In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to create the tiny little notebooks that you can slide into your A8 Micro Mini Traveler's Notebook. And by using these techniques, you can make as many little notebooks as you want. If you've purchased our kit, then you should have all of the items that you see, the paper, the little notebook, and the thread. You'll just need to provide your own sewing, a cross-stitch needle, and scissors. So let's get started. What we're going to do is take the tiny little notebook pages, and you'll see in the kit they're all pre-drilled for you, so you don't have to deal with any of that stuff because that can get really complicated fast. And we're going to just fold it in half. Now when you try to fold it, you're going to see that there's going to be pieces that stick out. That's okay. The key to getting a good fold at this stage is to make sure that your holes are in the center. So you don't want like a hole to be over here. You want to make sure that all the holes stay in the center. And then you want to squeeze it as tight as you can. Now I have tiny little girly fingers, so I like to use something to help press this down in place. You can use like the back of your scissors. I just happen to have this thing that came with my Silhouette Studio Cameo, and it just works really great for pressing down paper spines. So you can use whatever you want. Some people have a bone. You can use a bone. That's what most professional bookmakers have, but you know, if you're like me and you enjoy crafting on a budget, find what you have in your house and use that. That looks good, but these paper edges look absolutely terrible. So what we're gonna do is take our scissors, and you wanna make sure these scissors are really sharp. These are not like play school scissors, so obviously this isn't something a child would be making. This is a step for an adult. And you wanna look at your pages and just cut right at the edge of wherever the shortest page is. So looking at both sides, because you want to take both sides into consideration, it looks like that's my shortest edge. So we're going to cut all the pages to that edge. And as I'm cutting, I'm also pressing down as hard as I can on the paper so that there's very little shifting, because you don't want it to shift. And take your time. This is the most important step in this tutorial, so don't rush it. Okay, so let's see how this turned out. It looks pretty good, but you can see that I didn't hold it tight enough when I got to the end, and I actually curved a little bit. So no big deal, we can just trim that up and just get it a little cleaner. I'm kind of a perfectionist when it comes to pages for the little booklet. That's much better. And you'll see it kind of has like a little rough edge. I personally like that. If you don't, you can take each page out and like hand trim it further. But to me, I just think that has a nice personal effect. Like, this was definitely handmade with love, and I think it adds to the character of the booklet. So it's up to you, your preference, whatever you prefer. So we've got the pages trimmed. Now what we want to do is take the cover, fold that in half, and you'll see it's got the little holes. You want to make sure, just like the pages, you want the holes to be right at the back center. And then we're just going to place our pages inside just to get an idea of how much of the cover we want to trim off. So inside our kits, we've actually given you a lot of extra space. You can see there's tons of extra cardstock here, especially when this has all been stitched together. You've got a lot of extra space there. And the reason for that is because if you want to add the tabs, then you want to have a little extra cardstock. But some people may not want to have the tabs, so we've given you the choice either way. If you want the tabs, leave a little bit extra cardstock. If you don't want the tabs, then, you know, trim it up however you want. So I'm thinking, sometimes I like to just sort of run my nail to make a little mark. Sometimes the pattern on the cardstock will just make it easy, and I can just trim where I think it's going to be best trimmed at. And it's important not to trim the cover with the pages in it, because then you're adding more girth and puffiness to your book, and you don't want that right now. So we're just going to go ahead and trim the book cover and try to get it as straight as you can. Again, if it's not perfect, that's okay. It's part of what makes these really cute, is they have their own little character. So that looks great to me. I'm liking that. But see, I went again, look at that. I didn't cut it as straight as I wanted, so I just gotta catch that corner. There we go. Much better. Okay, so now what we want to do is we can either move into the sewing step, or if you want rounded corners, then you can either hand cut some rounded corners, or if you have this cool little tool, I got this on Amazon, I think it was like $8.99, it was super cheap. It has 3 different settings for corner rounding, and all you need to do is, I use the small setting, is just place the little corner inside the opening and press down. And now you just went from a sharp edge to a round edge. So to me, I like rounded corners. I also just really like using this tool, so it's up to you what you want to do with your booklet. But I'm going to round all of the corners. And in my corner rounder, I can't use the whole booklet at once. It'll just get stuck. So I need to separate mine out into sheets of 3. Now we've got all of our edges round, and our book looks great. So we're just going to line that up. So you can see it's lined up with the little holes. And then we're going to get our sewing needle and thread. And I like using a needle threader. It just makes my life much easier, so it's up to you. Now this would have come with your kit, but if you're making this yourself, it's 3 pieces of DMC floss. So we're going to run that through the sewing needle. This is actually a cross stitch needle. I like them because I stab myself less, and that's always better. And then I like to just pull on the thread so that it kind of dents it and gives it just sort of a better hold as I'm going to sew. So what we want to do is come in from the back of the book at the very top and go through that hole, and then go down through the center hole, and then come back up through the bottom hole. And then we're gonna actually, oh, almost lost my thread there. And then we're going to actually loop around the bottom hole. So we're gonna come back up through here. So you can see I've made a nice little loop there. And then go back through the middle hole. And then through the top hole, coming through the back. And now we can get rid of our needle. We want to pull this tight, so just yank on it. The book is tough, it can handle it. And then we want to tie a knot at the very top. And I prefer to double knot things because I just want them to last. And I feel like a double knot is just more secure. So we're going to tie a second knot. Okay, and then when we create these books for our clients, we actually glue the dot. So you can use a glue gun, or you can use a fine tip crazy glue stick. If you use a glue gun and you get too much glue, just wait till it dries and then trim the excess glue off. If you've glued it, then what you want to do is wait for the glue to dry before you trim off the excess thread. But if you're not going to glue it, then you can just go ahead, trim off the excess thread, set that aside, and there you go. You just made an adorable little 32-page booklet that you can draw in, write in, whatever you want. And because of its tiny size, it will also just slide right in perfectly into your A8 Traveler's Notebook. Great job!